The sun was slowly sinking behind the dusty hills, painting the small town in shades of orange and gold. The streets, usually full of the sounds of life, were now quiet, with only the occasional creak of a wagon wheel or the distant neigh of a horse breaking the stillness. The air was cool, sharper than it had been earlier in the day, and a gentle wind carried the faint scent of hay and earth. In this quiet evening, a young woman walked alone, her steps hurried yet careful, trying to shield herself from the chill that nipped at her skin. Her coat, old and thin, did little to keep the cold at bay. She hugged herself tightly, wrapping her arms around her torso in a futile attempt to stay warm. Her cheeks were red from the wind, and her breath came out in little clouds that quickly vanished in the evening air. She tried to tell herself that she was strong, that she could manage this small discomfort. But her teeth chattered against her will, and she couldn't help but wish for the warmth of a fire or a heavier coat. She had been at the market all day, helping her mother sell fruits and vegetables. The long hours on her feet had left her tired, and now as the shadows grew longer, she realized how exposed she truly was. The town streets, lined with wooden buildings and lanterns swinging in the wind, looked friendly enough, but being alone in the fading light made her feel small and vulnerable. She quickened her pace, hoping to reach home before it got completely dark. As she walked, her eyes scanned the street, half hoping she would see someone familiar, someone kind, anyone who could make her feel safe. That's when she noticed him. A man was walking toward her from the other end of the street. He was tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his eyes, and his boots made soft thuds against the wooden planks of the sidewalk. She recognized him instantly. He was a cowboy, someone who lived and worked on the ranches nearby. Most of the townspeople knew him as a friendly but teasing man. He had a way of joking and laughing that could sometimes make others feel embarrassed, even if he didn't mean harm. Her stomach tightened. She remembered the times he had playfully teased others in town, the way he made them blush or laugh nervously. She couldn't help but imagine that he would notice her shivering and worn-out coat and find it amusing. She felt her face grow hot, not just from the cold but from the fear of being mocked. She tried to make herself appear smaller, to slip past him quickly without attracting his attention. But he had already noticed her, and now he was walking closer, his boots crunching softly on the dirt and wooden boards. Her heart pounded. She told herself not to overthink it, but it was hard not to. She couldn't stop imagining his smile twisting into a teasing grin, the kind that would make her feel silly for being cold. Her hands trembled, and she hugged herself tighter, wishing she had stayed a little longer at the market to warm up before walking home. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, but the wind seemed to blow even colder, cutting through her thin coat and making her shiver all over again. Then something happened that she did not expect. The cowboy stopped right in front of her. For a moment he didn't speak, didn't move, just looked at her with calm eyes. The moment felt almost frozen, as if time had slowed down around them. She held her breath, waiting for the teasing comment, the joke, the laughter that she feared would come, but it didn't. Instead, slowly, he reached out and draped his large, weathered coat over her shoulders. The fabric was thick, rough yet warm, and it immediately wrapped her in a comforting embrace. She froze for a moment, surprised by the gesture. Her mind raced to find words, but nothing came out. The warmth spread through her, not just physically but emotionally, and a strange mix of relief and gratitude filled her chest. She looked up at him, expecting maybe a smirk or a playful remark, but his expression was gentle, almost serious. He didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He simply waited, giving her the space to adjust to the sudden comfort of his coat. "I thought you might be cold," he said softly, his voice calm and kind. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was quiet and sincere, carrying a warmth that matched the coat he had offered her. She felt a lump in her throat and nodded, unable to speak at first. She had not expected this. She had expected mockery, a joke at her expense, but instead, she received something entirely different, an act of kindness that made her heart swell. She adjusted the coat, letting it cover her shoulders fully. It smelled faintly of leather and horses, a scent that was strangely comforting. She realized that he had probably noticed her shivering from a distance and chose to help her in the simplest, most human way possible. There was no performance, no attention-seeking, just a quiet act of care. She couldn't remember the last time someone had done something so thoughtful without expecting anything in return. For a few moments, they stood there in silence. The wind continued to blow, carrying with it the smell of the earth and the fading warmth of the sun. The street seemed emptier now, as if the world had paused for this small exchange. She looked at the cowboy again and noticed details she hadn't before. The lines on his face, the roughness of his hands, the calm way he carried himself. He wasn't just a man who teased. He was someone who noticed others, someone who cared in subtle, quiet ways. Finally, she found her voice. "Thank you," she whispered, her words almost carried away by the wind. He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips, but it wasn't the kind of smile that mocked. It was a smile that acknowledged her gratitude and accepted it without fuss. He tipped his hat slightly and gave her a reassuring look before stepping back, letting her continue on her way home. As she walked, the coat wrapped around her like a shield against the cold. She felt a mixture of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and a strange sense of hope swirled within her. She had feared judgment and ridicule, but instead, she had encountered kindness. The encounter was brief, but it left a mark on her heart, a reminder that people were capable of unexpected goodness. She glanced back once, seeing the cowboy walking away down the empty street, his figure silhouetted against the glowing sunset. She realized that appearances could be deceiving. The man who had seemed like someone to fear, someone who might laugh at her discomfort, turned out to be a source of warmth and care. It made her think about her own assumptions, how quickly she had judged him based on stories and past observations, without knowing the whole person. The rest of the walk home felt lighter. The coat kept her warm, but it was more than just the physical warmth. It was the emotional warmth of knowing that someone noticed her struggle and chose to help. She imagined the stories she might tell her friends, not about the teasing cowboy, but about the moment when a stranger, someone who could have mocked her, chose instead to show kindness. By the time she reached her small wooden house at the edge of town, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky in deep shades of purple and blue. She took the coat off carefully, folding it neatly before returning it to the cowboy the next day, wanting to show her appreciation properly. But even as she hung her thin coat back in the closet, she realized that what mattered most was not the coat itself, but the act of care it represented. That evening, as she sat by the fireplace sipping warm tea, she thought about the encounter over and over. Her fear, her trembling, and her worry seemed almost distant now. What stayed with her was the unexpected kindness, a reminder that even in moments of vulnerability, the world could surprise her with warmth and understanding. She knew that she would carry that memory with her, not just as a story about a coat or a cowboy, but as a lesson in trust, empathy, and the quiet ways people could make a difference in each other's lives. And so, the evening ended not with fear or embarrassment, but with a soft smile on her face and a newfound sense of hope, all because of one simple, unassuming act of kindness. The next morning, the town awoke to soft golden sunlight spilling over the rooftops. Birds chirped in the distance, and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze made the streets feel alive once more. The young woman rose early, her mind still lingering on the previous evening. The memory of the cowboy draping his coat over her shoulders stayed with her, bringing a quiet warmth to her heart, even as the chill of the morning air nipped at her skin. She wrapped her thin coat around herself and stepped outside, determined to make the most of the day. As she walked toward the market, she noticed the familiar sights of her small town, the bakery with its sweet smell of fresh bread, the blacksmith hammering at his anvil, and children running along the streets with laughter ringing out in the air. Everything seemed brighter now, as if the memory of kindness had painted the world in warmer colors. Yet she couldn't shake the thought of the cowboy. What kind of person was he truly? The image of his gentle eyes and calm demeanor lingered in her mind, replacing the fear she had felt with curiosity and admiration. When she arrived at the market, she went about her day helping her mother set up the stalls and arrange the fruits and vegetables neatly. Despite the usual busyness, she found herself glancing at the street often, wondering if she would see the cowboy again. Part of her wanted to thank him properly for his kindness, but another part of her felt nervous. What if he forgot about the small act? Or what if he thought it was silly that she was so grateful? Nevertheless, she carried on, feeling the excitement of the possibility that their paths might cross once more. It was late morning when she finally saw him. The cowboy was at the edge of the town near the stables where horses pawed at the ground impatiently. He was talking softly to one of the ranch hands, but as soon as he spotted her, his face brightened with recognition. He nodded and tipped his hat in greeting, a gesture that made her heart skip a beat. Summoning her courage, she walked toward him, her steps careful but determined. "Good morning," she said, her voice a little shaky but clear. "I wanted to thank you again for last night." The cowboy smiled warmly and the nervous tension in her chest began to ease. "No need to thank me," he said kindly. "I just saw that you were cold. Anyone in your place, I would have done the same." His words were simple, yet they carried sincerity that reached her heart. She realized that his actions were not about attention or praise, but about caring for another person when it mattered most. The simplicity of it made it even more powerful. For the first time, she felt the kind of trust that comes when someone proves themselves without expectation or pretense. They walked together for a short while, keeping a steady pace as they shared small talk about the town, the weather, and the happenings on the ranch. She discovered that he was not just a cowboy who played jokes and teased people in town, but someone who quietly observed, noticed small struggles, and acted to help when he could. He told her about the early mornings on the ranch, about tending to the horses and caring for the fields, and she listened with fascination, realizing how much effort and patience his work required. As they talked, she felt her initial fear melt completely. The rough exterior she had once assumed was a mask for mockery now seemed like a shield for kindness. Every word he spoke reflected thoughtfulness, a genuine care for others, and an understanding of life's little hardships. She found herself laughing softly at some of his stories, not out of embarrassment, but because his humor was gentle and warm. The image of the teasing cowboy from the past now transformed into someone reliable, kind, and considerate. When it was time for her to return to the market, she felt a mixture of emotions. Gratitude, admiration, and a newfound sense of hope mingled in her chest. She wanted to express how much the coat, and more importantly the act of kindness, had meant to her, but she also wanted to carry the memory quietly, as a reminder that even the smallest gestures could leave a lasting impact on someone's life. "Thank you again," she said, her eyes meeting his with sincerity. "You don't know how much that meant to me." He nodded, tipping his hat once more. "I'm glad. Remember, it doesn't take much to make a difference. Sometimes the smallest gesture can warm more than just the body. It can warm the heart too." His words lingered with her long after they parted ways. She returned to the market with a spring in her step, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. Throughout the day, she carried a sense of calm confidence, knowing that people were capable of unexpected goodness. The encounter reminded her that assumptions could be misleading, and that every person had layers that could only be discovered through understanding and openness. As days passed, their paths crossed occasionally in town. Sometimes it was a nod, a tip of the hat, or a brief conversation, but each interaction reinforced the feeling of trust and warmth she had felt that first evening. She began to notice other acts of kindness in her own life inspired by his example, helping a neighbor carry groceries, offering a smile to someone struggling, or sharing a warm meal. She started to see the ripple effect of small, thoughtful actions. Her own perspective shifted as well. She learned to approach life with less fear, more openness, and a willingness to see the good in others. Where she once might have hesitated, worried about judgment or mockery, she now embraced the possibility of connection. The cowboy's simple act had taught her a profound lesson. That kindness often comes quietly, without announcement, and its impact can be far-reaching. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills once again, she walked past the stables and saw him tending to the horses. He looked up and waved, and she waved back, feeling a smile spread across her face. The memory of the first coat, the first gesture, felt as vivid as ever. It was more than just warmth. It was a reminder that moments of human connection, no matter how brief, could leave an imprint on the soul. She paused for a moment to reflect. Life was full of uncertainties, fears, and challenges, but she had learned that there were also moments of unexpected kindness, moments that could change the course of a day, or even a life. The cowboy, with his quiet strength and gentle actions, had shown her that, and now with each passing day, she carried that lesson with her, looking beyond appearances, trusting in people's goodness, and being willing to extend kindness in return. In the weeks that followed, she noticed small changes in herself. She smiled more freely at strangers, offered help without hesitation, and felt a growing sense of connection to the town and the people in it. Each act, no matter how small, reminded her of that evening when a simple coat had offered warmth not only to her body, but also to her heart. And though the cowboy remained a figure of quiet strength and gentle humor, she no longer feared him or his teasing. Instead, she saw him as a symbol of what it meant to care for someone without expectation, to notice the little struggles that others faced, and to respond with compassion. Their encounters, brief yet meaningful, became treasured memories, proof that even in the simplest actions, there was power to touch lives deeply. By the time the harvest season arrived, the young woman felt a sense of growth and confidence she had never known before. She moved through her days with a sense of purpose, carrying the memory of the cowboy's kindness as both inspiration and comfort. She realized that the world, while sometimes unpredictable and challenging, was also full of people capable of warmth, empathy, and quiet acts of generosity. And so, life in the small town went on, filled with work, laughter, and the daily routines that shaped the rhythm of their lives. But amidst it all, the memory of that cold evening, the coat, and the gentle cowboy remained a shining example of human goodness, a reminder that sometimes the simplest gestures could leave the deepest impact, and that even a fleeting moment of care could change the way someone saw the world. As the sun set each evening, painting the town in soft shades of orange and purple, she thought back to that day and smiled. Life had taught her that fear and judgment could be replaced by trust and understanding, that warmth could come from unexpected places, and that every small act of kindness had the power to change lives. The memory of the cowboy's coat draped over her shoulders was no longer just a story. It was a lesson, a guiding light that she would carry with her forever.